Okay, morning everyone. Welcome to the Investment Subcommittee, February 18th, 2026. Got quite a fulsome day here. Just want to acknowledge all the people in the room today that we have the committee members. We also have Morris, who was previously a committee member, but you're not on the committee now, Morris, is that right? Yeah. We have Councillor Ludlow, Councillor Gibbs and Councillor Evans and Councillor Pemberton. So welcome everyone. Moving into it, we do an apology from Chairman McPhail. He's on leave, so he's an apology today. And we have temporary apology, or whatever you call it, from Cassandra Crowley. She's going to be joining us at 10. So somebody happy to move those apologies?
I'll move.
Moved, Councillor Roy, seconded, Councillor Gibson. All those in favour?
Aye.
Excellent.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman, I think probably only committee members can second.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, what? You're not. Councillor Young's committee member. Yep. Yep.
Oh, you just read out that I was too.
No, you're attending.
Okay, sorry, got it
Sorry
wrong.
about that. Yep.
I'm a committee member. I thought I'd pulled out of that one. Yeah.
So as far as I understand, committee members are Matheson, Roy and Young.
Right, okay. Yep.
Okay. Okay, declarations of interest. We do have a list.
Excuse me, point of order, Chair. Councillor Rodway is included on the list.
Yeah, I think that's an error.
Yeah.
It is an error. We discovered
Okay.
yesterday. There had been a mistake in the writing up of the minutes of that meeting.
Apologies, that have been conveyed. to
Fair
you.
enough, it was listed.
Yep.
Sorry.
Okay, declarations of interest is a list here, but if other people could fill out their list would be much appreciated. And especially in relation to if anyone's holding any Southport shares.
Yeah, so the declarations of interest that we had to register as council, can they not just be transferred if we're a councillor?
Yep.
Thank you, Patrick.
Yep. Okay, any public forum petitions and deputations? No. Okay, can we move to the minutes and confirm the minutes of the meeting 20th of August 2025? Are they
I'm happy I was in attendance and I think they're an accurate record, so I'll move.
Move Councillor Roy, seconded Councillor Rodway, who's not on the committee but was on the committee at the time, was attending. So, yep. Excellent. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Any notifications or any matters arising from the minutes? I will speak to one in my chairman's report. There's just a reference in there, but I'll do it in the chairman's report. It's around the new formation of committees and the intersect of the land sitting within multiple committees now.
If I may, I'll just raise an item quickly. There are some actions on us in terms of the leased land, and we missed one of those actions, so just apologising for that. But in terms of addressing the actions related to land, we have a couple of activities coming up. So we will produce the standing report that was requested for the next committee meeting. We have a separate program called Leading on Our Lands that's being worked on elsewhere to this committee, but we'll be bringing back to this committee the program plan for that work so that this committee is aware of that program work that's occurring. And in the next investment committee meeting, we'll be seeking some time so that we can discuss what we would like us to investigate in terms of alternative revenue streams. So that's how we intend to work through the actions from the last committee on land.
Just in regards to the 10.2 property report that lists the committees that have an interest in the land, and I'd suggest that going forward, ICM be listed as an interested committee.
Absolutely, Councillor Matheson. I was going to bring up my chairman's report for the creation of a new committee. There'll be new terms of reference. As I sit outside, but I'm led to believe that was a reform of the Regional Services Committee. Is that correct? Yeah, but there'll be new terms of reference set. Yeah, and so already the council has had a meeting of all the committee chairs so that we work out a formal way that we communicate work that's being done in different committees. So if we just record that there now that that's occurred already, then I don't have to do that in the chairman's report. So that is that creation of the new integrated catchment management committee and a formal structure that all the committees will coordinate what's happening in the different rooms. Okay. Notifications of extraordinary items, urgent business, anything? No. Any questions have been forwarded? No. Chairman's report, as I say, just covered that off. That was the only thing I was going to report, was around the formation of those committees and the intersect of the responsibilities and the process that council's putting in place so that we meet in relation to integrated catchment management, financial performance, and the investment committee. So there'll be a structure to convey processes through that. Everyone happy with that? Cool. Cool. Okay, we will move into reports then. The first report being the sale process report. Scott, would you like to lead that?
Yeah, thank you very much. So the purpose of this report is to outline the process for if and when a port sale occurs, and it's basically to identify the role and function of the investment committee and what the role and function of council is. And what we've done in terms of this report is we've broken that down into 3 or 4 key components. The first component is around the public consultation process and effectively what is the role of this committee to determine whether that consultation has been done appropriately. The second one is around the question of price and value. So we have an independent third party who we are utilising on behalf of council to determine if the price is acceptable as value, because that is one of the consultation items that we said we would be looking to see as part of not selling at any price, but we need to make sure that we get value for the ratepayers. And so there is a process there for this group to determine against that document whether value has been received. And in the case where we may have a party or parties who wish to try and have some form of agreement with council as to any shared transaction, again, those considerations have a value consideration for council to determine whether that is acceptable or unacceptable. And so again, looking at this committee to determine that process of value and then make recommendation up to council as far as that. The last point is really once you're into the mechanics of the transaction, the mechanics is looked after through here because council doesn't need to be involved in that. It's basically a process. So I'm going to take the outline of the paper there as read unless people perhaps think that there should be other steps in the process that we need to consider.
Yeah. I have a question. I'm happy we've read it. We'll do that now.
Yep, that'd be good.
Yeah, on page 16, about halfway down, you've got consultation with the public. We've been through a reasonably arduous process, but bearing in mind the structure of where we are as regional council, maybe unitary council, and we're looking for ensuring that our process can be copied on any future occasion, in my view. Is there something else we need to do other than our long-term plan and our consultation and what we've done now, or are we set to proceed?
In my view, I think you're set to proceed because what you've done is you've got a long-term plan out there. You've gone through the consultation as you would have done. Inside that long-term plan, you've outlined that if council is able to receive appropriate value, that you've given yourself a 3-year window to execute that transaction. So as long as you're inside that window, I think you're basically doing what you've consulted to do with the public and you've received those public submissions and as part of that process. I think if you go beyond the 3-year window, there's probably a question as to whether you need to re-engage on that point.
Thank you.
Any other questions? We just wanted to document this process just so the council's got full confidence that it will be council making the decisions. The investment committee would only be making recommendations up, and so the full decision making sits with council.
Understand that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the points that just listed in here, that is like, as I say, the process around the consultation, etc., and the exploration of value before any recommendations are made up to council. Councillor Lidlow.
Thank you, Chairman. Just wanted to clarify in my own mind that the consultation we've previously done about this was simply asking the community if they wanted us to investigate. It wasn't a consultation on anything other than meat. That's what I understood it to be. Is that correct? Feel free to correct me. Yeah, it was to investigate though, not to.
I think it's subject to that value question.
Yeah.
So, you know, what we did was we always, I think in terms of the consultation, if we go back to what was put out to the public, we identified that yes, we have a 66.48% shareholding. We see value in a reduction to 51% because that still retains control within the council portfolio. The benefit that we identified is a diversification of those residual funds, but only if council got value in that transaction, and that's the point there. So it doesn't. I guess what we didn't want to do was obligate council to sell on the basis that you weren't getting value.
That was the start of this process, not.
So I think the public consultation was around: do we have approval to sell, and do we have approval to retain the funds in a strategic asset for investment, so that ultimately what we've got is still two investment assets,
yeah,
the two halves of the board, if you think of it that way now, or two parts. But the execution is based on value.
Thank you. Councillor Pemberton.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, pretty soon the LTP was purely around permission on consultation to grant permission to this council to make decisions, sell down when is best, and that's probably as simple as LTP could have been.
Just want to make that clear. Thank
We're
you.
just reading here. The council seeking the ability to be able to reduce the shareholding of the Southport to a level which is listed here. So it was asking for the ability to transact.
Not a commitment to.
So,
The ability to, not
Yes.
Does that answer, Councillor Lidlow? Yep. Councillor Roy?
yeah, so moving on to the next page where the investment committee has to determine the adequacy of any sale price. And we may well be asked some reasonably robust questions on this should the decision to sell make. We've got a process where we can adequately explain our process and how we've achieved that, well, if a decision is made.
So again, one of the parts of the process, Northington Partners had been engaged initially to estimate a value based on historic results of the port. The process would be that we would need to go and re-engage Northington just to update their numbers based on the latest information. So we've just had more information, for example, come out of the port at the end of last week. So if there was an offer that was there, Northington's would then do their set of numbers, which would give you effectively an acceptable price point to work, because you're using third-party experts who would normally value transactions potentially on a buy or a sell side to determine whether you are in a fair price point. So we're not asking Scott or any of the councillors individually to sit there and go, is that a good price? We're using expertise to determine that, but we have a mechanism to assess that. And the other thing is, I guess, in terms of that report and that value, that's not sitting there and is not public to any of us individually, where we can sit there and go, well, the minimum price is here, so go to that, right? It's actually up to the other parties to come back and say, this is the price point, and that's in the range which is acceptable.
So supplementary to that, so presuming or hoping we get an offer that meets all of the adequacy stuff, and then we need to get approval of council, will we have a time frame that we have to operate in? I would imagine there'd be an expectation that there wouldn't be an extended period while we hum and haw and have a special meeting, or just take us through the process from that side on. So if we meet the criteria of price,
Yes.
and everything else looks adequate, but we then need to sign it off by council.
Yes, so you are right. There may be, because these transactions unfortunately don't go to council calendars, there may well be a requirement for an extraordinary meeting of both the investment committee and potentially council, based around the timing of that transaction, if those criteria are met and recommended by the committee for approval.
Thank you.
Any more questions? I'm liking the line of questioning, because the reason for this paper was to give absolute transparency of process in any questions that committee or councillors are feeling exposed on. So I'm liking the line of questioning so that we give everyone confidence around the diligence of the process. So thank you. If nothing else, then there's a recommendation that the investment committee resolve to receive the sales process report.
I'll move that way.
Happy to move that, Councillor Matheson, seconded Councillor Roy. All those in favour? Aye. Thank you. Okay, we'll move to the next paper, which is an information paper for the council to be aware of, or committee to be aware of, applying the 3% annual withdrawal of the SIPO policy. Patrick, you're presenting this, aren't you?
I am, yes. Hey, look, just some brief commentary. So, the SIPO policy says that 3% of the fund's earnings will be withdrawn annually and used to fund operating expenditure. And that effectively allows us to reduce what would otherwise be a larger rates increase. In practice, this income has historically been reinvested back into the fund, which has increased the size of the fund, i.e. it hasn't been used to fund operating expenditure. Historically, that's been of lesser importance to us because for one reason or another, the organisation has generally been favourable to plan when operating expenditure is compared to budget. However, to minimise the rates increase for this year's annual plan, I'm going to be proposing that we budget for a minimum operating surplus and that we get the budget as accurate as possible. What this is going to mean is it's more likely that we will need to access the 3% per the SIPO and use it to fund our operating expenditure. So this paper just serves as an information for the committee that when we put the annual plan budget together and take it to councillors, we're going to be recommending as part of the pro forma budget that we put up that we apply the SIPO policy, withdraw the 3%, use it to fund operating expenditure, and that will be built into the proposed budget that we're taking forward. So I just wanted to put this paper forward to inform.
So there's no departure from our normal SIPO arrangement. You're just suggesting a continuation of what we've done.
What I'm suggesting is that we apply the SIPO policy.
Yeah, right. Cool. Which would be an annual decision we would make. We're not making it for any further out years. Correct. Thank you.
So the construction of the SIPO has this baked into it and it allows for this, and whether it's activated or not is a decision of the council. And we wanted to put this paper up.
Yep.
Very little point having a golden goose laying an egg if then you don't apply that egg to anything, or you make the decision as a council what you apply the egg to. Yep. So it's an information paper, and just wanted to give context that, as I say, it is written into the SIPO already, so no decisions needed to be made. It was just giving full transparency around. So there is a recommendation to receive the report, note the favourable impact on rate increase and unfavourable impact on the growth of the fund if the policy is enacted, and note that the expectations to contain rate increases enacted in the policy is an option that will be put forward to the consideration of the council as when asked. Somebody happy to move that, or just note we received this report?
I'll move all three.
You'll move all three. Seconded, Councillor Young. All those in favour?
Right.
Thank you. Southport Director Remuneration Resolution. Patrick, you've been on this again?
Yes, just a very brief comment here. So Southport has applied for and been successful with the NZX to gain a partial waiver, and that allows Environment Southland as a majority shareholder to vote on directors' remuneration at future annual general meetings. So the application outcome is attached for information, but this is just to inform that they have applied for a partial waiver and been successful.
Any questions or clarities required around this?
just to add that this has become relevant for us because now that we have an appointed director on the board, technically by voting, according to the NZX rules, by voting in favour of director remunerations, we're remunerating one of our own, being our representative on the board, and so therefore the waiver allows us to carry on. We can take a prudence position at the top, as opposed to the NZX rules, which says that we can't.
And we'd want to actually note the following conditions too and make sure that there's somebody diligently working on those so that we don't mess up on that.
I just think it's interesting and probably to be recognised that Southport made the request and it didn't come from us. So I felt that was a positive step in our relationship with the board.
Yeah, noted. Yeah. Okay. Everyone comfortable with that then? Happy to move that recommendation?
Guys, step up.
I'll move in that
Catch up.
direction, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Young, seconded by Councillor Matheson. All those in favour? Thank you.
Aye.
Okay, now we have the investment update, which is tabled here from JB Weir. Somebody speaking to this?
I can speak to it briefly. I'll be very brief because JB is coming in and presenting to us. But look, just their report reflects very strong performance from the managed fund over the last 6 months to June 30, from June 30, 2025 to 31st of December 2025. The portfolio has increased in value by 3.7 million, which is a net return of 10.8% for the 6 months to date. So very strong performance there. Most of that performance is in global equities and New Zealand fixed interest investment. And on a year-to-date basis, the majority of what we see there is unrealised capital gains, 3.2 million. They further indicated in their report that in terms of the benchmarks per asset class, they have our investments in the right place per our SIPO, and they're on track for very strong full-year returns. So those are probably the key things.
Really good to have this in public for full transparency for ratepayers who want to see the performance of the report. Councillor Young.
Roy, sorry. Yeah. I wanted to be looking like a hairy person. I was going to say, I think, you know, we've held the line on our risk and growth strategy, and I think this just proves that our SIBO is set about right. And it's sometimes when there's hiccups, we need patience, but it's come through for us. And I think the balance is appropriate and we don't need to look at that.
Scott?
Nice to have a couple of, I guess, comments in and around this as well. If we go back on our journey a little bit, back to our previous SIPO, we moved from the 50-50 asset allocation to a 60-40 asset allocation. And that was based on looking at the underlying reserves the council has, the likelihood of spend, and effectively our ability to tolerate risk around that. A lot of the benefit you've seen in the last 12 months has come on the growth side anyway. So back of an envelope benefit that moved from 50-50 to 60-40 has been worth about 1% to us of return. So that's about 350 grand or thereabouts. The other one is if you look at the report, you've got an active manager in JB Weir versus a passive manager. So you're not just tracking the index, you're actually trying to seek out performance. Now you pay fees for outperformance, but if you look at the 1 year numbers there, you know, again 1.9% less than fees. So effectively the benefit for council from the decision making of being active and moving from 50-50 to 60-40 in that 12-month window is about 750,000. So it's a good result, and obviously past performance don't guarantee future performance and all those other lovely things. But it does highlight that you are a long-term investor, you are an intergenerational investor, and the benefit of doing what you've done.
Councillor Pemberton.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering, unless I've missed it, is there an ability in the report to put equivalent of rate income against this, just so the community can understand the importance of our the investments, their performance, what they're actually providing the community. Just for, I guess, just for the public to understand how important the performance of this is to the overall performance of the services for this council.
Scott, do you want to make a comment, or Patrick?
Yeah, so I think we could add to the report. If I'm understanding you correctly, we could indicate how the growth of the fund would impact on our rate increase decisions. Perhaps that might be a good comparative. We've got to be a little bit careful in doing that.
I get it, but I'm trying to correlate what the importance of this performance is.
We'll take an action to work out something appropriate.
Yeah, on that though, important to note that they're unrealised gains.
That's why I think we have to be careful.
Thank you, Chair. In the past, we've often used a graph showing our income, where it comes from, and the investment income has in the past been shown as significant. You can see that as opposed to rates, user charges, and this that might not have been what we've gone in the rest of the past. Richard, I'm not sure. We've done that in the past. Would that help? Richard, I think it's not.
So John, just question, linking it to the last paper around the use of that 3%, which is a dollar figure in there. Is that what you're wanting to put in, or are we more than?
Well, I guess being unrealised is a bit challenging, but I guess trying to bring the importance of how, I guess, appetite for risk and return, and how, a bit of a, like to Eric's point, had a bit of a shift in our approach to things and such like. So it's just trying to make sure that there's a real understanding of how important our investments are to this region.
Scott?
So multiple answers here, but there's an action which will sit for the next investment committee. And that is the overarching investment strategy, which is how does our port performance, how does our land performance, how does our JV and managed funds performance all work together, because it's really the combination of the three of those that we need to try and think about collectively, because there will be seasons where one of them does better than the others. And it's the impact of those three together, which is really the key piece in terms of the ratepayers, and how much of that are we looking to utilise for council purposes. And so that sits inside your investment strategy, because that's really where we want to start to build in a little bit of redundancy and resilience, which is obviously a key word that seems to be used in every form these days. And so that will come into there as a key piece. The other one I'll just make as a comment is that, yes, the gains are unrealised, but what you have is a portfolio with JB where, because you're not into private equity or any of those types of things, actually all of the assets that you have are largely liquid. And a lot of the way that the managers work these days is if you need to get your cash, they will sell the asset that they like the lease now, get the cash out and pay that away, because you want to be as fully invested as you can. So they're not sitting there going, oh, well, we're going to hold the 3% back. They will, if Patrick gives them notification that 3% needs to be withdrawn in a month's time, they will make sure that they, yes, hold whatever dividends come in or whatever and sell something to get you the 3%. So while it's unrealised, these people should be always looking to turn the portfolio over, because you're not a taxpayer, so you may as well get the advantage of actually being who you are.
So my suggestion in terms of an action, I think the key thing you're looking for is to put some context around the $30 million rates that we collect and what we're earning from the fund. I think the context needs to be enriched with how the fund is used. So the fund cash backs our reserves, for example, and we don't want to deplete the reserves. We need to inflation protect the reserves. But to Scott's point, the fund is fairly liquid. We can do the 3% SIPO withdrawal, for example, for the earlier paper, and we can put some context around how much protection we can give to rates increases from the growth in the fund. So I suggest that we take an action to go and work that out so that it's a sensible comparison between what the rates look like, how the fund is earning, how the fund could practically be used, how the fund currently is used in terms of the reserves. I think we can give you a reasonable picture and we'll take that action.
In relation to the way that Ian Scott presented this, are we best to do that just for the fund or for all our investment portfolio? Because in the action plan, you will see we're coming up with your investment strategy. We are hitting that at our next meeting. Would you like that done across all the 3 asset classes?
Well, I think as long as we can communicate clearly with the community what the impact of our investments are, is what we're trying to do. So it would probably make sense, wouldn't it? If they were aligned.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. There was a question. So would you be happy with that?
I think so. I think we should just bear in mind in doing so that the growth we're seeing in the fund, we won't see that growth in our Southport investment, and we're not going to see that growth in our Eastland, our other assets. So most of the picture is going to come out of the fund actually in the exercise.
So, sorry.
Yep. Okay.
So is the deeper point then, John, that you're trying to dig into is actually showing the community the value of having that money there rather than actually spending it, not just offset rate. Yeah. So, because that's really what we're trying to.
Councillor Young.
Mr. Chair, to put it in simple terms, inflation's running around 3% at the moment, and in the 5-year average, it's 8.25% is equivalent to a 5% return over and above the value of our investments there. So if ratepayers can see what sort of return that is there, I think that's probably pretty worthwhile to be able to offset rates, because we're achieving considerably above what the inflation rate is, and protecting the assets at the same time.
Councillor Rodway.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think it is useful to put in the other investments as well, the land and Southport and the investments, so you can compare the performance of each of them, and that might get people thinking about, well, you know, where should we be investing where should we have our investments to get the best return?
Absolutely. So I think we'll capture that action where the question was asked in the JBWare portfolio briefing, but we will do a macro around that investment strategy portfolio and report on the returns or the contributions from all 3. That's what I'm hearing, is it? Yep.
Just to clarify, so where should we report that?
Bring that back to investment committee.
Is it, so the original request was to update this paper to give some perspective with the rates. I think what we've landed on is that we're going to look at all 3 assets. So should that be a separate paper, or should it be tied up with a specific piece of work that Scott's doing? I'm just keen to clarify how we can bring it back, how we deliver the action.
Well, at the risk of jumping ahead, I was looking at the investment activity report. In next meeting, we're going to be hitting an investment strategy paper,
right,
which we could link the returns across the whole investment portfolio. Could we link it to that paper? That's exactly what it should be. Yep. Everyone comfortable with that? Okay, we'll capture that action. Thank you. Any other question? Can we give some?
The recommendation.
Hang on, another question here.
I think we need to link this because our 10-year plan is showing that we're going to get a major debt of 7.72 million by the end of it. That this needs to be linked to that to show that it's wise for us to borrow money, we're getting more return on our investment rather than using what Johnny suggested was the capital to cover that borrowing, so that our ratepayers become a little more happy, I guess, that we're still making money out of our investment, but we're still paying a debt.
I was going to make another comment. I think the key thing is we need the confidence of our ratepayers that we're competent in what we're doing. So anything that we do that can illustrate a sell down of shares, our investment here, how we're using those resources, we need that we need to have that in mind, that we are aware, we're competent, and we're conscious of the rating impact if we don't get it right.
Yes.
Some words around that.
Yeah. So linking those two conversations, I like that narrative because ratepayers want the confidence of the discipline and process.
Yeah.
By the same token, the question was here, they have to see how it benefits them, or what the contribution of good process and practice delivers back to the community. Is that what I'm hearing?
So I'll move the recommendation.
Okay, Councillor Roy moved the recommendation. And you'll second that, Councillor Young. Thank you. All those in favour? Okay, that was the investment update. Now, the next, we've got the Southport investor presentation, but we're going to move this to later because Southport's actually going to come and present to us. We're going to move, we've got one more item, then we're going to move into public excluded, and then we're going to come out of public excluded when Southport come to us and do that back in the public session for full transparency around their interim results. Cool. You comfortable with that? Okay. Okay, then we'll move on to 9.6, the annual activity plan. This is just planning out the work for the year, and it's very relevant in relation to the conversation we just had. You'll see the graph on page 43 there, or the table on page 43, sorry, not graph. Any comments around pieces of work that we're not doing fast enough? Patrick, do you want to speak to this at all?
I can speak to it very briefly. So we're in the May committee. I'm proposing that we bring back to you a paper on the long-term accommodation for years. There are some investment implications for that if it becomes a business case to co-locate with ICC. There may be questions to be asked about: do we invest in the building? Do we enter into a lease? What does it look like? I think there are some implications from an investment point of view, so it's worth bringing that back for some discussion. Proposing that we catch up on the land actions that we missed by bringing you the Learning on Our Lands program documentation so that you can understand the parallel activity that's occurring elsewhere in our organisation on our leased land. And keen to have a land investment opportunities discussion with you and get some guidance about how we work up opportunities to get a better return on the land that we own. We've got Scott and I reviewing the SIPO settings, and we've got the investment strategy paper that Scott's bringing back. And from the earlier conversation, it feels like there's an action around adding some content to that paper from the earlier conversation. So that's what we've currently got proposed on the activity plan, and happy to sort of take any feedback if there's anything else we need to be adding.
Councillor Ludlow?
Thank you, Jim. We usually have two updates from Southport, an end of year and an interim. So maybe the one that we're not having today fits outside the calendar. I just can't remember when they usually are. We usually have an end of year.
No, we have one prior to the AGM.
Yeah.
So we've got two in here. We've got one in the February and one in the September period.
September being just prior to their annual meeting.
Yeah, so that's the
our
one.
second one.
So this year they had one on Friday, 13th. Yeah, and then their second announcement is in August.
Yeah.
Right. No, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That's all right.
I was questioned quite severely at the field days as to why are we running on with looking at the investment of long-term accommodation at the moment when there is so much uncertainty sitting out there. And I thought it's probably why that's coming from our ratepayers. So, you know, I don't know, how does everyone else feel?
Rob? Well, just happy to respond, but yeah, I mean, the key thing is, as we've talked about, our functions will continue. Our work needs to continue, and in at least for the next 2 to 3 years before anything's really going to change for those functions. So important that we've got some combination for to do that work. So our flood control, all of our work is going to continue. There'll be some changes, so that for sure, but actually our core functions of climate resilience, our water management, our biodiversity security. So that's really our logic for we need to continue with our housing. That's as I understand it, as the council decided.
So if I might jump in, this possibly isn't the room to be having this discussion where the investment committee, I suspect that the conversation to have that is with the full council. The reason we would be just looking at that, we would be getting an understanding of the impact of any decision the council made. So of course, that's not really within our brief. Our brief is the investments committee. Any decision council made around shared housing, whatever, it's kind of outside of our brief. Is that okay, Councillor Gibson?
I could make a smart comment, but yes, I'm happy.
Happy for a smart comment.
Yeah. It's a Morrison sidestep.
Well, not really, because it's not within the brief.
Yeah, I know.
It's not within our brief as the
We've got
investment
to
committee.
start considering it.
Yeah, and happy for the wider council to consider that, and then they'll just inform us as the investment committee what they want us to consider.
That's right.
Yeah. Councillor Ludlow?
Yeah, also, it's not just about shared accommodation, it's our long-term accommodation. So whether we need, all of the options are being considered as far as renovations or whatever. So it's a much bigger picture than just that. And there's obviously, as we've functions still have to operate from somewhere.
Councillor Roy?
Yeah, well, I think we're in a process. We all know that, and there's two streams still. We've got the LGA looking at what should happen after what came out of the initiatives that occurred in another territorial authority in the south. And then we've got the government thing going. And I think if we want to be credible with the local government one we need to say we're doing some preparation. This is a segment of a wider picture. It's not really we're not at the decision-making process in any way. But when that comes, we can then go back to everybody and say, look, we've given this due process. It's the way I see it. That's the way I answer that question, Councillor.
Yeah, and look, I'm not trying to sidestep. I mean, the impact that the council, decisions the council will make, we need to be briefed as the investment committee, because as we are looking over how we manage your investments, of course, we want to be cognizant of what other decisions are being made.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I'd say it's just the same with learning or whatever we're going to call it. It just seems to keep changing. But on our land program, look, between ICM and S&P, to have something in 20, and yeah, it's a long way out. We've got a heck of a lot of work in front of us. So I guess the reality is just don't look at that date and think there'll be something there is my suggestion, because there is a lot of work to be done there before it comes to this committee, I would have thought.
Okay, yeah. As far as I understood from the terms of reference from the investment committee, all they wanted us to put forth some options for the other that council would consider in relation to the recommendations from the other committees. And we were just tabling some revenue-related options for consideration. Yeah. Okay, everyone happy with that annual activity plan? Okay, so what do we have to note that, Julie, or we ready? Yeah. Okay, so if somebody happy to move the recommendation to receive the annual activity report, Councillor Roy, seconded Councillor Matheson, finger up first. All in favour? Thank you. Okay, now we move to the extraordinary urgent publicly excluded. Is that correct?
Yes, I do. In accordance with section 48-1 for the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act 1987, and in particular interest protected by section 7 of that act, that the public be excluded from the following parts of the proceedings of this meeting, namely the confirmation of the public excluded minutes of the investment committee and the adoption of public excluded committee resolutions.
Somebody move into that. Or have we
Move in that direction.
Councillor Young, seconded Councillor Roy. All those in favour? Aye. Thank you. So we'll move into public exclusion.
You may go ahead.
May go ahead. Okay,